The amphitheater of the Galactic Challenge Arena loomed like an ancient coliseum, its metallic walls humming with energy. Built on the desolate moon of a forgotten star system, it was a place where only the fiercest and most resilient species dared to tread. The arena was a crucible, designed to test the mettle of those who claimed the title of Deathworlder, the most feared and respected beings in the galaxy. And today, a new contender stood on its threshold, a human. Captain Elias Drake, the chosen representative of Earth, surveyed the arena's entrance with a steely gaze. Clad in a lightweight exosuit, its matte black surface reflecting the harsh artificial light, he looked every bit the seasoned survivor. Yet beneath that calm exterior, a storm of emotions brewed. The honor of Earth rested on his shoulders, and he knew that every other Deathworlder species present, Craterii, Zothkor, and the mighty Volcrus, doubted his right to be there. They saw humans as fragile, weaklings from a soft world. He was here to prove them wrong. The alien spectators filled the stands, a cacophony of jeers and laughter reverberating through the air. Their eyes, many more than two and glowing with malice, fixated on the human with cruel anticipation. Elias could feel the weight of their expectations. No one believed he would survive, but that doubt only fueled his determination. At the center of the arena, towering above the rest, was the Arbiter, a being of immense stature and authority. Its body was a mass of shifting scales, each one reflecting a different hue of the spectrum. The Arbiter's voice, amplified by the arena's systems, boomed across the space, silencing the crowd. "Today," it declared, "we witnessed the trial of Earth's champion, a creature from a world barely recognized as dangerous. The challenge before him is no mere test of strength, but of cunning, resilience, and the will to survive. Should he succeed, humanity will earn its place among the Deathworlders. Should he fail, his world will be marked as a weakling planet, its inhabitants unworthy of our respect." The crowd erupted once more, but Elias remained focused. His mind raced through the survival scenarios he had trained for, each more intense than the last. The jungles of the Amazon, the deserts of the Sahara, the frozen wastelands of Antarctica. Earth had its own share of deadly environments, and Elias had mastered them all. But this was different. This was a game designed by alien minds, with no rules or predictable patterns. Only the strongest, most adaptable, could hope to survive. As the Arbiter concluded its announcement, a massive door at the far end of the arena groaned open, revealing the entrance to the challenge zone. From within, the scent of unfamiliar flora and the distant roar of alien beasts wafted through. It was a jungle, but not one Elias had ever encountered. The trees were impossibly tall, their bark a dark, metallic sheen, while the underbrush glowed with bioluminescent fungi. The air crackled with energy, and every shadow seemed to pulse with hidden dangers. Elias took a deep breath, centering himself. His heartbeat slowed, his muscles relaxed. He was ready. "Begin," the Arbiter commanded, and the challenge was underway. Stepping into the jungle, Elias immediately activated the sensors in his suit. A holographic display flickered to life on his visor, mapping the terrain and highlighting potential threats. The jungle was a labyrinth of twisted roots and vines, and as he moved deeper, the sounds of the arena faded away, replaced by the rustling of unseen creatures. He moved cautiously, each step deliberate. He knew better than to rush in blindly. Patience and observation were his allies. Within minutes, he spotted the first of many traps, a seemingly innocent cluster of flowers that, upon closer inspection, were actually the bait for a predator that, Elias knew, was watching him right now. He crouched low, blending into the shadows, and waited. The seconds ticked by, and then, with a sudden burst of speed, the creature struck. It was a blur of teeth and claws, its body camouflaged to match the jungle's colors. But Elias was faster. He rolled to the side, evading the attack, and in one swift motion drew his combat knife, plunging it into the creature's side. It let out a deafening screech before collapsing, lifeless. Elias didn't linger. He couldn't afford to. The jungle was alive with danger, and the death of one predator often meant the approach of others. He moved on, his mind already calculating the next steps. He needed to find water, shelter, and a vantage point from which to survey the area. The challenge had just begun, and the true horrors of the arena were still to come. Yet as he navigated this alien jungle, Elias felt a growing sense of resolve. Every challenge he faced, every obstacle he overcame, was another step toward proving humanity's worth. They had mocked him, laughed at the idea of a human Deathworlder, but they had no idea what he was capable of. By the time the first day's light began to dim, though in this alien world, time was meaningless, Elias had secured a makeshift camp. He had found a stream, gathered edible plants, and set traps around its perimeter. As he sat by his small fire, the light flickering against the darkness, he allowed himself a moment of rest. But only a moment. Elias was ready, for he was not just a survivor of Earth, he was its defender, and he would not fail. With the jungle's night sounds echoing around him, Elias closed his eyes, his hand resting on his knife. Whatever came next, he would face it head-on. The arena would soon learn that humans were more than just inhabitants of a death world. They were masters of survival, and he would prove it. The dawn in the alien jungle was neither warm nor welcoming. A cold, unearthly mist clung to the ground, weaving through the metallic roots of the towering trees, shrouding the landscape in a ghostly veil. Captain Elias Drake awoke to the sound of distant growls, the noise reverberating through the dense underbrush. His eyes snapped open, instantly alert. The first night had passed without incident, but he knew better than to be lulled into a false sense of security. This jungle was alive, waiting, watching. Elias quickly dismantled his makeshift camp, erasing all traces of his presence. Stealth was as vital as strength in this place. As he moved deeper into the jungle, the bioluminescent fungi that had glowed softly in the darkness began to fade, replaced by an eerie, natural light that filtered through the thick canopy. Every step was a calculated risk. The ground beneath his feet was treacherous, shifting and pulsing with a life of its own, as if the jungle itself was aware of his intrusion. He pressed on, guided by the data his suit gathered. It wasn't long before the first real test of the day emerged. A clearing appeared ahead, the underbrush thinning out to reveal a cluster of alien beasts. They were large, six-legged creatures with sinewy muscles rippling beneath thick, scaled hides. Their eyes, multiple and unblinking, glowed a sickly yellow as they grazed on the bizarre vegetation. Elias could see the intelligence behind those eyes, the predatory instinct barely concealed by their seemingly docile behavior. These were no mere animals. They were the arena's guardians, bred to hunt and kill intruders like him. Elias studied them from a distance, noting their pattern of movement, the way they communicated with low growls and subtle gestures. Attacking them head-on would be suicide, but bypassing them unnoticed seemed equally impossible. They were blocking the only clear path forward. Elias crouched low, his mind racing. He needed a distraction, something to draw their attention away from him long enough to slip by. Scanning the area, he noticed a cluster of explosive pods hanging from a tree branch nearby. A smile tugged at the corner of his mouth. This could work. Carefully, he retrieved a stone and aimed for the pods. The first throw missed, but the second struck true. The pod burst with a loud pop, sending a cloud of thick, acrid smoke billowing into the air. The beasts reacted immediately, their attention snapping toward the disturbance. They moved with surprising speed for their size, closing in on the source of the noise. Elias didn't waste a second. He darted across the clearing, keeping low to the ground, his heart pounding in his chest. The creatures were distracted, but only for a moment. Just as he reached the other side, one of them caught his scent. It turned, snarling, and charged after him. Elias bolted, his feet pounding against the uneven ground as he sprinted through the jungle. The beast was gaining on him, its heavy footfalls shaking the earth. He could feel its hot breath on his back, hear the snap of its jaws as it closed the distance. Panic threatened to rise, but Elias forced it down. He couldn't afford to lose control now. Up ahead, he spotted a narrow ravine. It was a gamble, but he had no other choice. With a burst of speed, he leaped, his body sailing over the edge. He hit the opposite side hard, rolling to absorb the impact. The beast, too large to make the jump, skidded to a halt at the edge, snarling in frustration. It paced back and forth, glaring at Elias with burning eyes, before finally retreating into the jungle. Breathing heavily, Elias took a moment to catch his breath. His body ached from the exertion, but there was no time to rest. He had to keep moving, to stay ahead of whatever else this arena had in store. The jungle, once merely a dense forest of alien flora, now seemed to pulse with malevolence, as if it was actively working against him. Hours passed in a blur of constant vigilance and narrow escapes. Elias faced down carnivorous plants with vines that lashed out like whips, and he navigated treacherous terrain that shifted beneath his feet. The jungle was relentless, each step more perilous than the last. Yet through it all, Elias remained focused, drawing on every ounce of his training, every survival instinct honed on Earth's own hostile landscapes. But it wasn't just the physical challenges that wore on him. The isolation, the constant threat of death, the knowledge that he was alone in this alien wilderness, all of it weighed heavily on his mind. There were moments when doubt crept in, whispering that perhaps the aliens were right, that he was out of his depth, that humanity didn't belong in the ranks of Deathworlders. But each time, Elias pushed those thoughts aside. He couldn't afford to falter. Not now. Not ever. As the day drew to a close, the jungle began to change. The trees thinned out, giving way to a vast swamp. The air was thick with humidity, the ground beneath his feet turning to unstable muck. It was a new environment, and with it, new dangers. Elias knew that the arena was testing him, throwing everything it had at him to see if he would break. But Elias Drake was not one to break easily. As nightfall approached, he found a small island of solid ground within the swamp. It wasn't much, but it would serve as a temporary refuge. Exhausted but unyielding, Elias set up a rudimentary camp. He had survived another day. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, and he would be ready for them. Lying beneath the alien stars, Elias closed his eyes, his hand gripping the hilt of his knife. The jungle sounds were a constant reminder of the danger that lurked in every shadow, but he was not afraid. The arena had thrown its worst at him, and he was still standing. He would continue to fight, to survive, until the arena itself acknowledged what the galaxy refused to believe, that humans were not just Deathworlders. They were survivors. With that thought, Elias drifted into a restless sleep, knowing that when the sun rose again, so too would his resolve. The swamp had tested Elias's endurance, but what lay ahead promised to push him beyond anything he had ever faced. As the first light of dawn filtered through the thick canopy, Elias knew the final challenge was near. The air was heavy, thick with tension, as if the very jungle held its breath in anticipation. The Arbiter's words echoed in his mind. This challenge would determine not just his survival, but the worth of his entire species. Elias moved cautiously through the swamp, each step sinking into the mire, threatening to pull him under. His muscles ached from days of constant strain, but he forced himself onward. The jungle around him began to change once more, the trees thinning until they gave way to a barren, rocky expanse. The ground was cracked and dry, heat radiating from the earth in waves. This new environment was a stark contrast to the humid swamp, its desolation a clear message. This was the arena's endgame. Ahead, a massive structure loomed, an ancient stone fortress, its walls worn by time but still imposing. It stood as a final gauntlet, a last barrier between Elias and victory. As he approached, the air grew thick with the scent of sulfur, and the ground trembled beneath his feet. Whatever awaited him inside that fortress was not just a physical threat. It was the embodiment of everything the arena had to offer. The entrance to the fortress was a gaping maw, dark and foreboding. Without hesitation, Elias stepped inside, the temperature dropping sharply as the shadows enveloped him. The interior was a labyrinth of narrow corridors and steep staircases, each turn designed to disorient and confuse. The walls seemed to close in around him, the silence oppressive. But Elias remained focused, his instincts guiding him through the maze. Finally, he reached a massive chamber, the heart of the fortress. The air here was thick with tension, the walls lined with ancient carvings depicting long-forgotten battles. At the center of the chamber, a large platform rose from the ground, and on it, a single creature waited, an apex predator from a world more dangerous than any Elias had ever encountered. Its skin was a deep obsidian black, its eyes glowing a fiery red. The creature exuded power, its muscles rippling beneath its sleek exterior. This was the arena's final challenge, the ultimate test of Elias's worth. The creature let out a low growl, its eyes locking onto Elias. There was no hesitation in its movements as it leaped from the platform, closing the distance between them in a heartbeat. Elias barely had time to react, diving to the side as the creature's claws slashed through the air where he had just stood. He rolled to his feet, drawing his knife, but he knew it would be of little use against a creature of his size and strength. The creature lunged again, faster than before, and this time, Elias was ready. He sidestepped the attack, using the creature's momentum against it. The beast crashed into the wall, but it recovered quickly, turning on him with a snarl. Elias circled the chamber, his mind racing. He needed a plan. Brute force would only get him so far. As the creature advanced, Elias noticed the carvings on the walls. They weren't just depictions of battles. They were instructions, detailing how the ancient warriors had defeated similar beasts. The carvings showed the use of traps, leveraging the environment to outsmart the predator. Elias glanced around the chamber, quickly spotting the mechanisms embedded in the floor and walls. The entire room was a weapon, waiting to be activated. Elias moved with purpose, luring the creature toward one of the mechanisms. At the last moment, he triggered the trap, and a massive stone slab dropped from the ceiling, crashing down where the creature stood. But the beast was quick, dodging the trap with unnatural speed. It was a near miss, but Elias wasn't discouraged. He had learned something vital. The creature wasn't invincible. It could be outsmarted. The battle became a deadly game of cat and mouse, with Elias using the traps to wear the creature down. Each time, the beast came closer to landing a fatal blow. But Elias remained one step ahead, his movements precise and calculated. The fortress echoed with the sounds of their struggle, the walls trembling with each impact. Finally, after what felt like hours, the creature began to tire. Its movements slowed, and Elias seized the opportunity. He led the beast to the center of the chamber, where the largest trap awaited. With a final burst of speed, Elias triggered the mechanism, and the floor beneath the creature collapsed, sending it plummeting into a pit of spikes. The beast let out one last roar before silence fell over the chamber. Elias stood at the edge of the pit, breathing heavily, his body trembling with exhaustion. He had done it. The final challenge was over. But more than that, he had proven humanity's worth. The arena, with all its dangers, had not defeated him. Slowly, he made his way back through the fortress, each step a testament to his survival. As he emerged into the light, the crowd in the amphitheater was silent. Even the arbiter, standing high above, seemed taken aback. But as the reality of Elias's victory sank in, a slow, grudging applause began to ripple through the stands. It grew louder, more fervent, until the entire arena was filled with the sound of alien voices cheering for the human who had defied the odds. Elias looked up, his expression unreadable, but inside, he felt a swell of pride. He had come to this arena as a challenger, but he was leaving as a champion. The galaxy would remember this day, and it would remember the strength of humanity. With the cheers still ringing in his ears, Elias turned and walked away from the arena, knowing that whatever challenges lay ahead, he had proven that humans were more than just survivors. They were warriors, forged in the fires of their own death world and ready to stand among the stars.